Throughout Scripture, history, and even creation itself, the number 42 appears again and again. What is its meaning? Why does it surface repeatedly at thresholds of change? In popular culture, the number 42 is famously called the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. In The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a playful hint that even our modern imagination senses its cosmic significance. Before we delve in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to stay updated on all of our content. In the book of Numbers, chapter 33, it states that these are the journeys of the children of Israel. And if you look at that passage and you decide you want to count them up, there's actually 42 journeys in all. And so a lot of people don't realize this, that from the time that the children of Israel, they left Egypt, they were slaves in Egypt, and they were redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. They were baptized through the Yam Suf, or the Sea of Reeds, and entered into the wilderness experience of 40 years before entering into the promised land and beginning to possess the land. But while they were in that in-between place in the wilderness, there were actually 42 separate journeys or encampments that they made. And so there's a picture here of redemption through the salvation process, and we're given a glimpse into the inward parts of the soul. And so we go through different stages or journeys in life, and some of those places that we stay may only be for a day or two, just like them. And some of those stages or places that we're encamped may last for years. And so realize that that's normal. And I think a lot of people don't realize this. This is part of that process of working out your own salvation with fear and trembling. There's a process to this whole thing. And I think in the number 42, it's going to help reveal that more for you. At least I hope that's the case. So Israel's path from Egypt to the Promised Land is marked by 42 stations, a measured, purposeful journey from bondage to inheritance. There's a number of these patterns of testing and judgment in the Scriptures we see pertaining to the number 42. For example, in the book of Judges, chapter 12, verse 6, we see that 42,000 Ephraimites fell because, or died, they fell because they failed to respond to a situation. Likewise, in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 24, a more well-known passage, where Elisha, the protege of the prophet Elijah, was being mocked by these children, and or juveniles probably, not toddlers. And he called these she-bears, these two she-bears out of the woods, and devoured them. And it says that 42 were killed. So again, the 42 encampments, the 42,000 Ephraimites that died, the 42 children that were judged, and in the book of Revelation, a fairly well-known passage, or a couple of passages, in Revelation chapter 11, verse 2, we see that there are 42 months of trial, trouble, tribulation, where the Gentiles are trampling down the holy city, and the beast speaks blasphemies. So also in chapter 13, verse 5. These examples show that 42 often marks a period of testing, separation, and judgment, a time of intense transition. This kind of leads us up to the Gospels in Matthew chapter 1. So in Matthew chapter 1, right away, Matthew gives us a genealogy to show that Yeshua is heir to the throne of David. We see his Davidic lineage there. Similarly, or contrary-wise, we see a genealogy discussed in the book of Luke. But here in Matthew chapter 1, Matthew intentionally divides, or sees that they are divided, all of these generations, into 14 generations, 3 sets of 14 generations, for a total of 42 generations from Abraham unto Yeshua. And so we see that from Abraham to the time of the of David were 14 generations, and from the time of David unto the carrying away into Babylon were 14 generations, and from the time of the carrying away unto Yeshua were 14 generations. So these three sets of 14 for a total of 42 show a structured path revealing the covenant unfolding through history. By the way, everything about that speaks of David. The gematria of David, his name, the numerical value is 14. Also, the numerical value of the word hand or yod is also 14. And so we get into this thing of the hand of the Lord, or his God's expression through this space-time realm here. And so we have these three sets of 14, which basically, in case I forget to mention it later, we could also see, let me just mention, the Passover, Pesach, is on the 14th day of the month, when the children of Israel that I referred to earlier applied the blood of the lamb to their doorposts and lintels, to their portals. And so the number 14 speaks of David and redemption, and which is 7 doubled, a perfection or a completion doubled. And now we have 3 sets. And often, like in the Bible, when we have something that's mentioned 3 times, like I'm reminded in Isaiah, where I believe it's Isaiah chapter 6, where Isaiah sees this vision, and the seraphim are saying, a type, a rank of angelic beings, are saying, holy, 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 kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. And so it's like it's amplifying something, a little bit like today. If you're trying to accentuate or really amplify something, like we might put things in all capital letters, and so that's a thing in our age. Something being done 3 times is a major amplification to express a point or idea or truth. It really is declaring something very loudly. And so another set of 42. Oh, let me real quickly just touch on it. I won't have time to hit on everything here, but this also pertains to the idea, like if we look at the genealogies in Matthew chapter 1:17, we see that it's very much like, we could think of it like the new moon, that the new moon, the first sliver of the moon, begins the Hebrew month, and along the 14th, 15th of the month is when we have the moon at its fullest, its most glorious, the full moon, and then it gradually wanes back to darkness again. And so we see that picture with the history of how, as Abraham arises, he's like that little sliver of light of the new moon, of newness, portending something else, in like a purposeful movement in transition. And so it's going to get brighter and brighter until the time of King David and Solomon, where it's at its fullness, it's at its golden age. And then things begin to darken as it gets into this really dark space of the carrying away unto Babylon. And then it gradually brightens again at the time of Yeshua. And so, similar to the 14 generations, or the 14 stages or journeys that the children of Israel had while they were in the wilderness, in the book of Numbers chapter 35 verse 6, we see that 42 cities were given to the Levites, and basically they lived among the other tribes of Israel. Among the 12 tribes, the Levites were scattered out in 42 cities among them, plus the 6 cities of refuge. So we have 3 cities of refuge on one side of the Jordan and 3 cities of refuge on the other side, plus 42 cities given unto the Levites. Okay, and so the Levites are sort of like buffers and connectors to between Israel and between Israel and God. Okay, in Kabbalistic tradition, we have the mysterious 42-letter name of God, and it represents the descent of divine energy into creation, bridging the infinite and the finite. We can see in human life a mirror of this with looking into gestation and maturity. It's going to show this same pattern. So basically, 42 weeks marks the outer edge of full-term pregnancy, the moment of emergence into life. 42 days postpartum is a natural threshold for recovery and readiness. There's a lot of cool stuff in mathematics, and I'm not going to get all into them. I'll just touch on a couple of them. 42 is a Catalan number, describes branching and folding, a natural symbol of development, transition, and structured emergence. I mentioned earlier that from Abraham to Yeshua, we see these 42 generations mentioned in the book of Matthew. And so basically, if we look, the rabbis tell us, and the Bible's really big on genealogies, and so we can look and we can see that, for example, Adam was 130 when he begot Seth, and he lived 800 more years, and he died at 930 years old, and so on. And so we can begin to put together time frames and see how long sometimes it is from one event or one person to another one. And so starting at Adam, if we go 1948 years into the future, that's when Abraham was born. Abraham was born in the year 1948 from Adam. Okay, because that's very interesting, because in our age, from the last Adam, or the second Adam, Yeshua, 1948 years into the future, in 1948, Israel was reborn as a nation, showing this fullness of a gestation process. So Yeshua was born roughly 2,000 years after the time of Abraham, the culmination of the 42 generation path. From Yeshua to today is about another 2,000 years. So it looks like this. There would be 42 generations from when he ascended to our time, that we would be somewhere close to 42 generations and somewhere around 40 Jubilee periods. In the book of Acts chapter 3 verse 21, it tells us that the heavens must receive him, that is Yeshua, until the times of the restitution or restoration of all things. And so it's a pretty exciting time to be alive, because there's a process going along here, and all of these things that were lost, that vanished, identities and many things that have been forgotten about, are now beginning to be restored in our time as it reaches its fullness and culmination. History appears to move in mirrored arcs. 2,000 years of promise leading to Messiah, followed by 2,000 years of expansion and waiting for restoration. And this is a well-known concept in Judaism, that going back to the 6 and 7 days of creation, as well as all of human history from the time of Adam, mirrors that. And so, like, from the first 2,000 years, from Adam basically into the time of Noah, a little bit past when Noah died, around that, there's about 2,000 years. And the first 2 days, or 2,000 years, if you will, because one day is as 1,000 years as a day, and a day is 1,000 years, as we see in 2 Peter chapter 3, and then also in the Psalms. And so the first 2,000 years are understood to be the years of tohu, or of chaos. And then the next 2,000 years are thought of as the years of the age of Torah. And then the next 2,000 years, or the third set there, is understood to be the days of the Mashiach, days of the Messiah, or the Messianic age, okay? And so that's been for like the last 2,000 years. And so these things are, a lot of these patterns and numbers are very interesting when we begin to kind of investigate them. And so if we go beyond Scripture in nature, we can even see some interesting things. The Gutenberg Bible, the first book printed in Europe, has 42 lines per column, also called the 42-line Bible. Rainbows, or sunlight refracted and reflected inside of a raindrop, exist at an angle of 42 degrees, the arc that we perceive a rainbow. And so that's pretty cool, because light, as it's refracted, is refracted at exactly the angle of 42 degrees. In mathematics, the sum of the first three odd powers is also 42. A Torah scroll is traditionally written with no fewer than 42 lines per column, echoing Israel's journeys. 42 is the number with which God creates the universe, the 42-letter name of God. The name of Atzilut, or emanation, symbolizes the flow of divine energy into creation. All right, this is kind of something new that I've discovered recently, but I've always kind of had a fascination with it. I did a video some time back talking about hexagons and these hexagonal shapes throughout all of nature. And I mentioned at that time that turtles have the hexagonal shape on their shells. And it's interesting, this I didn't realize until recently, that the turtle has in his inward or interior shapes of the hexagons or polygons, there are 13, and these 13 are surrounded by, how many was it surrounded by? I'm trying to remember here. My mind completely went blank. Trying to remember what that is. Well, anyway, if we total up, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the inside, which is these 13 hexagonal shapes, are surrounded by a perimeter of 28 hexagons, or these 28 polygons on the outside of the turtle shell. And so this is going to go back to what I was talking about earlier with the 42 generations divided into 3 sections of 14 times 3 for a total of 42 generations. And I talked about how this mirrors the 28-day month, okay? And a lot of cultures have recognized this in the turtle shell. And so the turtle shell is understood by many to represent time, and particularly the month of 13 months and 28 days within a 13-month calendar. And so that's pretty interesting, because if we take those numbers, 13 plus 28, then we have the number 41. 41 is the gematria of the Hebrew word aim, or mother. But if we take all of the parts and we consider add it to the whole, 1, then we end up with 42. And so hopefully I said that right. That 28, the exterior shapes on the turtle, combined with the 13 shapes inside. And by the way, the number 13 is the gematria, or numerical value, of the word echad, or 1. And so we read and we recite in the book of Devarim, chapter 6, verse 4, the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Echad. Echad has a numerical value of 13. Also, love in Hebrew has a gematria, or numerical value, of 13. So we take this idea of the 13, of the oneness, 13 months. We add it to the 28 around the perimeter, and we get 41. But when we look at the macro shape of the one macro, it gives us a total of 42. And so even in biology, 42 appears as a structural principle. The turtle shell is organized in a precise geometric pattern with 42 primary scutes, is what each of those little shapes are called, the little polygons or hexagonal shapes. And it represents this idea of protection, order, the unfolding of life, and even time, as I've mentioned. A natural reflection of the cosmic and mystical significance of the number 42. So in scripture, mysticism, nature, and human design, the number 42 marks thresholds, the point where one stage ends and another begins. It's a number of journeys, testing, preparation, and fulfillment. From Abraham to Yeshua, a covenant completed. From Yeshua to us, the pattern continues, a mirror promise, waiting for its full realization. Where do you find yourself in this pattern? At the end of one journey or at the threshold of the next? If you've enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button so you don't miss any other videos. Thanks very much for watching and exploring with me, and hope to see you very soon again. Take care now. God bless.
Hey, if you like this video, please click like and subscribe to be notified whenever we release new content, and to help other people find us out there on the vast plains of YouTube land. If you have a question or a topic you'd like for us to do a video about, just leave it in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Later, y'all.